First of all, thank you everybody for attending, and thanks to the USA Cycling staff for putting this together. I'm going to give you a brief update just on the status of USA Cycling, and I've got a few slides to help walk me through. So let's see if I can do this. I think I can. Okay, so that's the welcome slide, and I appreciate everything you guys do for the sport of cycling, and you're going to hear from us around things we're going to try to do to make your businesses better, easier, more effective, all those kinds of things. We recognize that events are the key to just about everything we do domestically, and we've had no better proof of that than what's gone on in the last 15 months in this country. But I'd summarize it this way. We have navigated the pandemic. We dramatically reduced our operating costs and I think did a decent job of maintaining a connection with our core membership. That's not to be mistaken with the growth that we're after, but we back in April last year said we're going to make fast decisions to live to fight another day. And I'll show you the numbers, but we've been able to do that. I do think as an organization that is interested in growing cycling at all levels, we're beginning to increase our relevance in the community that you guys represent and with our membership. And we have some really exciting products to talk about in the back half of this year and beyond. So the main message is it was very difficult, and particularly difficult because if you remember the timing, we had most of our variable revenue in the door before COVID hit. Now, clearly we gave an inordinate amount of refunds last year when people asked for it, but systemically we were financially in an okay place. With the one big variable being we had paid, and I think the number was $2.2 million for our insurance for your events that didn't happen. And we've made changes in this year and the year forward to address that, but last year that was a sunk cost that we did have to deal with. But by and large, what this chart will show you, and I imagine this is a little bit hard to see, but think about it just reading two columns. The far right one is the prior year, 2019. We had 15.9 million, basically $16 million of revenue, and we ended up losing about $320,000 on the year. That was within our budget commitment, well under, in fact, at the bottom line. That was not a great year, but it was an okay year. If you go to the far left, this says forecast, but this is how 2020 ended. Our revenue was down sharply to 11.1 million. We had a plan we expected to lose about 1.8 million, and we were able to break even. So really good cost control by Chuck and Tara and Belisi and all the people that run our day-to-day business. We kept some powder dry to invest in the future. So, no gold stars given out for the year, but good navigation of an awfully difficult year. The challenge we face going forward is that, this year, COVID was totally visible before people renewed. So one of the things we're dealing with, I'm going to go back a slide. One of the things we're dealing with right now is our membership is at about 60% of normal. And because about 40% of our people are waiting on the sidelines to decide whether or not their events are going to be, things they can participate in this year. Totally understandable human nature. People say, all right, last year I bought a racing license for races that didn't happen because I didn't know they weren't going to happen. This year I'm questioning it. And so because of it, we're in a little bit worse situation this year than last year. You may have seen that we marketed a guarantee or an insurance plan, if you will, to all members that if they buy their membership by the end of this month, by 2/28, and they don't race this year, we're going to extend their membership 6 months into the following, into 2022. That is designed to give people a bit more confidence, and we're very clearly saying to them, without their membership, it's hard for us to support your events. So it's a circular, system that we subsidize insurance based on membership revenue, and if we don't have revenue, it gets much harder to do. So I know that may cause some questions, and I'm happy to answer those a little bit later in the conversation, but we're a bit more concerned about 21 than we were 20 because of the timing of renewals. All right, so that's kind of the bad news that we're dealing with. On the good news, and I think I skipped over this, but while the short term is a challenge, I'm very optimistic about the direction that USA Cycling is taking strategically and our ability to play a much bigger role in the cycling community than we have in the past. And it's all built around a message, a new brand position called We Champion, and particularly We Champion Cycling. And we've built our programming around these 3 P's that are on this slide: participation, programs, and performance. And the performance one we've always done and have done relatively well. The programs and participation is some of the old with some significant changes for the new. And so I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. New programs, the Let's Ride camps that hopefully you've heard about that Mari Holden is leading. They'll be free starter, get to know your bike, get to know bike etiquette, get to know the sport of cycling conducted around the country. And our goal is to get 20 to 25,000 new kids through that program. It's free, it's available to everybody, and it's linked with our DEI work. So we can do it not only in the obvious places, but in neighborhoods where cycling may be less accessible today for infrastructure or economic or oversight reasons. You've also seen us add one new event to the national championship calendar in the youth and collegiate event that'll be tied on the front end of our mountain bike nationals at Winter Park in July. That's designed to try to build a bridge from kids that are coming out of NICA and want to continue, or other youth programs, and want to continue in cycling in a collegiate career. We think we can help build some of the bridges that don't exist there today. You've seen us make youth membership free. That was a big deal for us. It was a pretty cannibalistic in the short run, but I'm convinced long run it's going to serve us significantly well and serve you significantly well by getting and keeping more kids in the sport longer. So kids 18 and under will no longer need to pay for memberships. They are free today and they will remain free. And then finally, you might have read a little bit about Jim Miller's Olympic Development Academy. This is unlike what was reported in Velo News. This is not the selling of the national team. This is about building infrastructure below the national team that gives kids with potential, with aptitude, and with financial backing, either from themselves, from us, or from sponsors, a chance to step up to the more elite level of racing and to get some experience racing in Europe, and all designed to fill in where we see there's a breakdown. So our long-term goal is to have 120 kids a year going through the Olympic Development Academy. We're going to structure it such that while it is an expensive endeavor, if kids don't have the money, we're going to have the ability to give them partial and full scholarships. And our goal is to have about 20% of the kids in that program on some form of financial support so we can broaden the reach of the sport. So a lot going on there, and a lot of it is new. So there'll be some specific questions that we probably can't answer yet, but it's about getting more kids riding, getting them participating in their first mass start event, and then pushing them towards racing as their both aptitude and appetite allows them or drives them to do. So it's all about thinking about it as a consumer journey. And if we don't have more kids on bikes, you don't have more people at the start line. It's overly simplified for sure, but it is the right program, I think, for us to go forward with. That's all under this new We Champion Cycling positioning. And I think I mentioned, you also saw we did finally get a deal done with NICA so we can be a partner of theirs and help those kids continue their riding towards domestic events, domestic racing, and eventually, world-class racing. Okay, that's a mouthful. Let me go on to elite athletics. Throughout this pandemic, we have been committed to use the break as a way to send a more capable, more prepared team to Tokyo this summer. Jim Miller and his coaching staff have done an excellent job of keeping people focused on this and we are very optimistic about our performance in Tokyo. We've set very specific and public goals that are outlined here. We want to win 7 medals. We want to be the best organization at athlete development. Arguably, that's a tough one to measure. We want a medal in every discipline, and we want to win the most medal by women. Those are the goals we set quite a while ago. We're still committed to them, and we're optimistic that we'll live up to these measures. I spoke about this already, but the Olympic Development Academy is going to be launched this year. We're only going to do it for 1 semester because of COVID implications, but while there have been plenty of people sitting on the sidelines, quite frankly, commenting on social media about how wrong this is, we don't believe it's wrong at all. We recognize that elite athlete development is expensive. People tended to focus on the $10,000 per semester price tag. This is not a profit center for us. In fact, it's an investment center. It'll have a negative return for us financially. We still think it's the right thing to do. And it'll get more kids in the system and more kids competing on world tour teams and more kids competing at the highest levels of each discipline. And we think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to look aggressively for sponsors to help us reduce the cost for participants and particularly reduce the cost for kids who otherwise wouldn't be able to do this. So we're going to hold our ground on the Olympic Development Academy and get it started this year.
Rob, I think it's a good time. I said we were going to address it in Q&A, but Patricia just asked, can you comment at all on scholarships and availability? I think Jim's still working on that, but can you address that before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, our long-term goal is to have 20% of the kids in the ODA on meaningful levels of sponsorship. I don't want to say full because we'll have to make the decision, are you better off to spread the money wider or deeper? But our goal is that 20% would be on sponsorship. We got to go find that money. We don't have it. But I'm committed with the new board we put in place to go out and get non-endemic corporate sponsors that will help us pay for this. We've had good progress so far, but we got a long way to go. I will tell you that today Jim has, I think, over 400 applications for the first semester. So while the press and, quite frankly, the peanut gallery, I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I probably don't mean it overly respectfully, have been, negative on this, the demand for this product is clearly out there, and we think it helps get more people racing in this country. So I'm not sure if I answered that question. Let me go back and see.
Yeah, and Rob, the question from Patricia and Matt, and just to step in and give you all a little answer, with COVID and us having to restructure, I think Jim and the athletics crew, Jim Miller, are running this or finalizing details. But the question, Rob, is, what's the application? Who gets partial? Who gets full scholarships?
Yeah.
Probably.
I'll tell you just up front, we don't have that worked out yet. This program is being launched and not every I and T is dotted. The objective is to use the scholarship. And in fact, I'll step back even further. Part of the negative commentary about this was, quote, is this a pay to play system? And the answer, again, this is recorded, so it'll be there forever, but yeah, it is. Of course it is. Every system is a pay to play. The question is, who pays? There's no way to get these kids developed for free. What we're committing to is to go out and try to raise money. So a family that has a kid that has, talent and appetite, but maybe not all of the money or maybe not any of the money, that we can help support them. That process will be controversial no matter how we do it, because whenever you have people who get, you have people who don't. But we still think being afraid of that is not the reason to not do this. So we don't have a formal process yet of how it'll be distributed, and we do not have a fund that will apply that yet. We're committed to go raise that money. And so for parents that can pay or individuals that can pay, we're going to ask them to pay. And for those that can't, we're going to be in a position to help support them do that. But, all of this chatter about this, how do people think it's going to happen? Getting kids to Europe, getting them into races, getting them on equipment, getting them kitted out, all the things that I don't care what the sport is. This is not unique to cycling. And is it economically selective? Yes, it is, unfortunately. That's how the world works. We're trying to intervene in a way that makes it less like that and more democratic by making it totally open. And it is not, as Fred Dreyer reported in the Velo News, this is not the selling of the national team. It has nothing to do with the national team, except to feed athletes towards it. The national team would be selected based on performance the way it always has been, and it will be funded by us. So I hope that provides more clarity. I recognize I can't fully answer the specific question of exactly how it'll be allocated. Okay. All right, let me move forward to Let's Ride. I talked a little bit about this. This is designed to do two specific things. Get more kids on bikes safely and started well, A, and B, introduce them at a very young age and introduce their families to USA Cycling. You know, this has really nothing to do with producing racers. This is way too early in the consumer journey for that. This is about introducing the sport and introducing USA Cycling as one of the guardians of the sport. Not the only, but one of them. So they'll be free. They'll be in church parking lots and attached to every national championship we have, and hopefully run by many of our clubs and coaches, and hopefully attached to many of your events. We're going to be prepared to deliver this kind of kit in a box for these. And it is a light lift from a technical standpoint. You know, you don't need to be a deeply accomplished racer to teach this kind of stuff. It is really going to be very basic and very introductory, and focus, as I said, on safety, on etiquette, and on the sport of cycling. And you know, we're going to look for corporate sponsors to help us do this, and we're going to get out. And I think there's 4 of them this month that are being test marketed in 4 different communities across the U.S. And our goal is, like I said, to get 20,000 kids or more through it annually. Okay, beyond, you know, 21 and beyond, we got to get through this year, but you know, the pivot we're trying to make, we've got 100 years of experience, and we have been in the business of selling a compliance-based product, a license, access to your events, and we do that, you know, relatively well. And that market is relatively stable. I put both those in quotes. We have very minimal experience selling a discretionary product, that is membership or financial supportership, that does not require a piece of paper that gets you into events. But you guys know as well as I do, that market is 100 times bigger than the racing market. And the reality is racing can no longer financially support racing by itself. It needs the support of a broader community. And that broader community are, you know, what I refer to as mass event, non-racing riders. People who go and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mass start events a year. They, you know, may think they're a racer, but they're not technically a categorized racer. And these are events that don't require a license. And we have to be able to penetrate that. And that message has never resonated much in the past. And I think the last area, and this is kind of a brand image issue, I think generally speaking, the cycling community has not seen USA Cycling as an organization that's contributing to the growth of the entire cycling community. They've seen us focus on the pointy tip of the spear, the racing community, and to some degree, damn everything else. And the problem with that is we have a role to play to help elevate not only our work, but your work. You know, people don't wake up and become bike racers. There is a consumer journey that starts with, you know, some sort of riding, and then some sort of riding with others, and then some sort of mass event participation, and then a matriculation towards racing. And we can't produce more racers if we don't make the funnel bigger at the beginning. And we've got to be seen as well-intentioned and supportive of PFB's effort and NICA's effort and all of the great development organizations around the country, but also all of the start riding development across the country. You know, Joan and I had a discussion about a month ago about the great things that go on at her facility. We need to help that happen more. And we need to not be a barrier to anything that gets kids riding bikes. And that's a pivot that we're trying to make right now. I hope you're beginning to see it. I'll fully tell you that without events and with the disruption we've dealt with in the last 15 months, we've made much slower progress than I would have hoped. But I still am very optimistic about the long-term vision. And, I've said before, I'd rather have 1 million members at a $10 a year membership than what we have right now. And someday get out of the business of selling licenses, if you will, by having a community that can financially support itself. But taxing fewer with more, bigger bills is not the way to grow. We're going into this year, as I said, with both caution and optimism. We need to grow members, and we need to get over this wait and see issue that current license holders are executing, because it's got us very much behind the 8 ball in the short run. We've got internal targets that are much more aggressive than our budgeted targets. We've got new programs around youth, around Let's Ride, around the Olympic Development Academy, and new partnerships with NICA that we are very optimistic can help drive growth for cycling in total. And we're going to do as well as we can in Tokyo, and hopefully walk away with at least 7 medals, which will put some energy behind the sport. You guys know, and I know personally, because I on the side own a bike shop, the broad category of people riding bikes is extremely healthy right now. It does not translate to mass start events, and it does not translate to racing yet, for both COVID reasons and, quite frankly, because it's not as welcoming as it could be. So those are the areas that we're trying to get focused on and try to help you with. We want to know what we can do for you to help you better. Tara and Chuck have talked a lot about the financial support we're providing through the insurance subsidy that we're bringing back. We want to help you get your events back better, faster, and stronger. And we want your help in telling your non-racing participants why belonging to USA Cycling is good for them and good for you. Because we're going to spend back all that money and more in the sport. We don't have any shareholders to satisfy. We don't have any we're a nonprofit organization that, as you've seen from the budget, is prepared to lose money to grow the sport. Obviously, that model doesn't work forever, but we're trying to get to a place where we can bring much more money into the sport of cycling, into racing, and into the development of youth. So I think with that, I will stop and take any questions either through chat or Chuck, if you want to open it up, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, Rob, I think we've caught up with most, and we'll if you all want to start typing questions in, it's Q&A time now. Patricia asked Rob, besides a racing license, what other carrots can be provided for those that are license holders, such as e-racing membership discounts, which we do have, by the way, renewal rate discounts, et cetera. You want to spill the beans on what we're working on?
Patricia, that's been the heart of, when Liz was running membership and we launched the ride program, it got started. But the reality is we have always had trouble articulating what the benefits of membership are beyond the access the racing license gets you. And obviously, I'm a good example. I'm a mass start event guy. I never even knew that licenses existed before I came here. So what are you going to give me? What's worth $50 or $100 or $20 a year? Number one, we think we have to lead with the mission of supporting cycling, of supporting elite cycling development, and of supporting getting kids on bikes. So if you don't believe in that, then quite frankly, you probably shouldn't be a member. So it's not so much tactical, physical benefits. So the first thing is we got to lead with the mission, and that mission needs to be strong enough to attract people who have interest. Okay. Number two, we have asked the event community, and I'm talking non-race, the non-race event community, to not require membership, but to create experiences that would justify membership. Things like early registration. I particularly want these things to not cost you money, because I understand, at least roughly, the economics of event organization. You don't do this to become billionaires. You do it because you're driven by passion. So whatever give backs you provide, we do not want them to come from your bottom line. So we've talked about early registration. I don't think that costs you anything. We've talked about an advantage start pen that's maybe behind the pros, but ahead of the general participants. We've talked about a beer tent that's for members only, if you will, or advertised as for members. We've talked about registration discounts, but if we went that road, we've been very careful to say, make them tiny, $5 off registration if you're a USAC membership holder. Things that say to people who go to mass start events where licenses are not required, this isn't required, but if you are a member, you get a slightly better experience. And I think that, we're willing to encourage that by cutting you breaks and deals on the insurance cost. So that's the second set of benefits. And then the third set of benefits are much more specific. Discounts with partners. We've got some exciting things coming where those discounts will get more meaningful. But Patricia, you hit on the head. If it's what do I get for $40, it's got to be mission driven. If you don't believe in group events and I struggle with this because my background is in the running market, and you guys know this, to go run the New York Marathon, entry fee is $600. It's $500 or $600. The Boston Marathon, I think, is a little bit less, but these big iconic events, if my membership is $40 or $50 and you get a slightly better registration line or a slightly better start position or a beer tent that's aimed at me, that's pretty easy to justify. These are, a lot of these events, people spend a lot of money to get to them. But how do they happen? How do we provide, COVID guidelines that Tara's team did such a good job with? How do we provide officials? How do we make sure you have a good financial proposition in your event? It takes a contribution from more people than bike racers. And that's the bridge we've never been able to get over. And quite frankly, I'll be the first to tell you, until we're over it, we're not over it. And we have that problem right now because mass start events aren't even happening. And people are saying, I'm not going to buy a racing license unless I know I'm going to race. So short term, we're in a pretty tenuous position, but we will get through it.
And I raised my hand. I just wanted to comment back to you, Rob. Hey, you're preaching to the choir. I'm one of the supporters of USAC, and I buy the license and I pay for all this stuff, regardless of whether I'm going to race, because I want to support, like you said, the mission. I'm not the person. So the people that I'm wanting to give that little elbow nudge to are my friends that are like, I'm not going to buy a license because there's no racing. But there's a lot of, actually I've watched it happen over the last year. There are coaches that are out of work because there's no events to train for, et cetera, et cetera. But I've seen them in innovative ways come up with ways to stay in touch with their athletes, to do fun things to them, to find ways for them to stay motivated. And I do appreciate the spoke, and I've seen the spoke come through, and I click on those challenges and I do all that stuff because I do believe in the mission. So my question is a little more rhetorical than it is for you to be defensive about. It's one of those things where, you know what, they're looking for what's in it for me. That is just a reality.
Yep.
And so what I'm trying to say is perhaps a little PR can go a long way to say, here's what you're supporting here, and I know that you do, you introduce the athletes that you're supporting. I read the stuff. So I'm the choir, but I'm wondering if there's maybe a way you can help with a little more PR. I know that that's, again, more time and energy, but that was the purpose of my question.
And I just want to respond. Is this Patricia speaking?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you. I don't want to rest you. And I think your assessment is absolutely right. And I would tell you that my consumer experience is, if I ask people in a public focus group, who will financially support Team USA? we will get 100% of people to raise their hands because of peer pressure. But just like NPR, actually 1 in 10 give. So if every listener NPR has, only 1 out of 10 give. I can live with 1 out of 10. There's 7 million active cyclists in this country. If 1 out of 10 financially support us, and I'm not saying buy a license, so I'm going to come back to that part of the question, but just financially support us, we will have a budget much closer to British cycling. We'll have a budget much closer to support these events, the people on this call that we want. So it is a journey, but I want to reinforce, we've never had that muscle tone because we have been selling a compliance-based product. I know my group hates when I say this, but we've been the Department of Motor Vehicles. People don't come to us because they want to support it. Our 100,000-ish members come to us because we have required them to buy a small piece of paper to let them into an event. And I'm not underselling the value that takes for, Tara's team to put on these events and for V's team to get you all the permits and for the safety it goes with. There's a lot in it, but people look at it as a tax. And we're talking about making a pivot away from a tax to a community. I spent my whole life in the brand business, and I'm always super respectful of brands that achieve enough affinity that people tattoo them on their body. The Marine Corps, Harley Davidson, triathlon, or Ironman. With what we've done in the past, and that wasn't the objective, but nobody's going to go get a Usoc tattoo right now. We don't have that kind of affinity. But if we're seen as somebody that supports the industry, that wins at the top, that gets people involved in the middle, and gets kids and bikes at the bottom, we'll start developing membership that do believe in that mission. And so that's where we're trying to go, Patricia. It takes time and it takes money, and we're short on both of them, but that's the way work works. We got to get there. And hopefully you've seen, the idea in a down year to make kids free. We had a long conversation with the CFO about that. He said to me, "What the hell are you smoking? We can barely get back to even, and you're going to go give away." I think at the time we had about 9,000 membership, so it was a meaningful percentage of our membership. We made them free because we think it's right long term. And again, that's not going to create anybody to be a racer. The real issue is that middle group, that group that goes to mass start events but has no orientation or perception of USA Cycling. If we can put products out there that let them support it at $5 a month, that's a home run for us. And some are going to want physical benefits. If you think about physical benefits on one end and kind of mission on the other end, consumers will distribute across that continuum, but they got to believe in what we're doing, or else the mission's going to fall flat. And as hard as this organization will work, I think we've done a pretty poor job of communicating that mission. And that's what We Champion Cycling is all about. So I don't know if we'll be successful, but I've built brands before and I've had a lot less to work with than this. Many of you people have heard me say this. I've never had IP that's as powerful as the USA Cycling logo. And I've never had a staff that's as committed to the mission as this one is. So can we get there? I don't know. I think so. I hope so. Or you'll have to listen to some other talking head and tell you what his or her plan is, but that's ours for now.
Rob, a couple of questions have come over. I'll answer one. Janie asked about a good insurance rate for Century riders. Janie, I'm going to talk about the event organizer rate. We are going to launch a new product. One of those things that got referred to that's going to be a pretty cool insurance package for just your run-of-the-mill rider who wants insurance while they're out riding their bike. And we've managed to work a pretty fantastic deal on that. So that'll be coming out really soon. We're just signed the agreement. Alex asked, Rob, how do other USOC groups like USATF or Ski and Snowboard grow and sustain their programs?
Yeah, and I think Ski is one that I know Tiger Shaw, my counterpart, quite well, and they're in my hometown, so I spend a lot of time looking at them. There's two I've been modeling that are attracted to me because I looked at most of the NGBs when I got here, and I keep looking at. And by the way, financially, everybody's in a pretty similar place. Membership down 30%, sponsorship down 50%. But the two that attract me for different reasons are swimming and ski. Swimming because it's a great example of infrastructure. For those of you, some of you I'm sure are swimming parents or you've had kids that have been in the program. When you drop a 5-year-old in a local pool, she's immediately connected to USA Swimming. Fairly indirectly, you don't see it, but there's a financial stream from that first lesson that goes all the way through. And with some socioeconomic limitations, swimming is a sport that many kids can get access to, and if they're good or have an appetite, there's infrastructure that can bring them along. We don't have that in this sport. I mean, you guys know this better than I do. Most of our athletes come from other sports because, with the exception of NICA's progress recently, there's very few CCAPs of the world, and I'm forgetting, in the different youth organizations, there are just not enough of them. So I look at swimming and say, how can I duplicate it? That's where Let's Ride was born. It's not a solution, it's a start. The second half of that is around keeping kids engaged and making sure it's a safe environment where they can continue to advance as they want and not worry how many graduate to racers. That we don't control that. They control that. What we control is the infrastructure they're in to get them there. And today it's super peculiar how racers happen. And as I've gotten to know our top athletes, almost all of them have a relative in the sport, which that's not a bad thing, but God, no wonder it's so, white and male. Because what if you don't have those relatives? What if you don't have that background in your family? And that's what we got to try to chip away at. I see the ski, what I like about what they do from a sponsorship standpoint, they're 5 times better than us. 10 times better. Having math trouble this morning. They're 10 times better than us. There's things we can learn there. And what drives me nuts is it's the same partners. Lots of people who ski, bike, lots of people who bike, ski. It's the same constituency. It's got the same socioeconomic limitations, maybe more so, arguably. Skiing might be more exclusive. And it's the same brands that want to support it. So that's our own maturity and capability that we need to work on, because we should be able to generate $5 to $10 million a year in sponsorship, not $1 million. I mean,
Robin,
go ahead.
We got time for a couple more questions. I think Albert asked, and I'm going to weigh in a little on this because we've discussed it. Albert commented, follow the PGA. I'm going to summarize membership promo packs, logos, stickers with every bike sold. Albert, we've looked at multiple organizations in regards to, I think Rob's having internet trouble. We looked at multiple organizations as models. 2 that I've seen are the Motorcycle Safety Foundation and AMA are very tied in with the industry. You can't buy a motorcycle or go to a motorcycle safety class without hearing about AMA, the American Motorcycle Association. Say what you will about the NRA, the National Rifle Association. I know it's controversial, but try to go be involved in shooting at all. If you buy a firearm, the first thing you see when you open that up is an NRA pamphlet. And they've done despite who they are, you may not agree, they've done a really good job of getting people in that sport involved and believing in the organization. So there's 2. Rob, I don't know if you want to comment. We definitely looked at these.
I think those are good examples. And you guys that are deep in the sport, all of you are, that we have a brand and a reputation, quite frankly, deserved in some areas and undeserved in others, of being, the no police or the triple pleated khaki fun suckers or whatever you want to call it. But there's a hell of a lot that doesn't happen in this sport if you don't have a healthy USA Cycling. Luckily for us, the 6 million people that are in that mass start and cyclist community, they don't have any baggage with USA Cycling. They have no idea who we are. So I'm not so focused on getting the 100,000 racers to love us. The reality is we sell them a compliance-based product that they need, and they get a lot for their money. And I don't think we need to get caught up in that debate. What we need to do is introduce, USA Cycling and its mission to the people who never are going to race. And, I'm looking to see who put that question there. Albert, my hope is anytime you see a car with a bike rack, you see the logo on Chuck's shirt on their back window. That's simple. That this is like you see a 26.2 sticker. But we haven't really aimed at that person at all. And you only need to be, in my opinion, you can be a $10 a year member. I'm going to give you a sticker. I'm asking you to put it on your car. You don't need to buy a $100 racing license. So you're exactly right. We need to socialize the mission of USA Cycling and the goodness that comes from kids on bikes to a place where people are willing to give us a small financial donation to make sure it keeps happening.
Great. I think we're pretty caught up. Rob Reed had a comment on the partner via insurance. Reed, that is coming. I mentioned it a little earlier. Applying to non-cyclists, we have had some affinity deals in the past.
We do have a new one coming. I will tell you, I'm a tiny bit hesitant because I hate selling a negative. When new cyclists start, they're not thinking about what do I do when I get hit by a car. Let's hope they are not thinking about that. So I think but it is a product that obviously if like me, you spend a lot of time on the road or on a trail, you eventually realize that having a bit more insurance is probably not a bad thing if I'm going to keep doing this sport. But we are going to have an improved product there. I think no matter what, we have to put the mission first, and we have to articulate it in a way that resonates with, again, 15% of cyclists is all we need. That'll give us 1 million members.
Janie made a comment, Rob, about, you do a certain number of events, you get a patch, get people involved. Janie, that's something we're actually looking at virtually more than the physical patch, is that we're going to be rebuilding our results and ranking system. We've got our RFP out for that now, but it's our intention is to open that up to much more than just racing and recognize people's cool results. I mean, I will give you the quick backstory. When Rob started, we used to call, I saw the chat about licenses versus memberships. We used to call it races and non-competitive. That was our lingo. You were a race if it was a race. And if you were gravel, century, whatever, you were non-competitive. And Rob's comment was, when I line up at the front of that Grand Fondo, it's sure as hell competitive for me. And that's a great point. And we had to have a bit of a pivot mentally on that. So, Rob, I don't know if you want to comment on that.
No, I just think, we have the support of racing deep in our bones, and I think we're damn good at it. What we need to realize is that the riding community is significantly bigger than racing's ever going to be, and nobody's going to be a racer without being a rider first. So we just need to shift our focus to that thick middle and find reasons to drive affiliation with riders. And the language we use is a bit off-putting. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just, this is a technical, particular sport. Nobody, unlike a 5K, nobody wakes up on Saturday and strolls out and enters the local crit. It doesn't happen that way. It's too intimidating. So we got to bring people along, and we got to focus on what we're doing to get you started. And then you'll advance at your own pace. But I am convinced that the suggestions, I'm looking at the chat, all these suggestions you guys are raising, I mean, this business way better than I do. And that's not lost on me at all. But what you guys do is incredibly important to the sport. We want to support it, and we want your help socializing it with the less competitive participant, because they're not going to be more competitive until we engage with them. So thank you very much for the work you're doing. I'll tell you, we are optimistic that racing is going to come back this year to some degree, to a good degree. We think it's probably not a whole lot before June, but I'm ready to get back in business. We've been sitting in our own little rooms for way too long.
Great, Rob. Thanks. And we're running right on time. We're going to roll in our next presentation. I think Rob's going to stay on for a bit, and myself and staff can certainly answer questions. But Rob, thanks for the transparency as always on sharing with the group.